someone in a position and force them to do something and expect their behavior not to change.
Right. Well, maybe she felt like she won the lottery.
In a position to do something and then told her she can't behave that way. But
right.
I'm not saying Ishmael didn't abuse Isaac, because maybe he actually did, because there's a whole lot of jealousy and stuff there. But Sarah was horrible to Hagar in the beginning. That's why she left and went into the desert when she was still pregnant. She fled, and God said, go back and stay with her. And the whole time, Abraham's like, whatever, she's your slave, you deal with her. No. You know, it was just a horrible thing. And so then Hagar goes back, raises her son, and, you know, he's clearly early teens, tweens, right? When the baby Isaac is born.
I think so.
So that's a pretty terrible age anyway. So in my mind, probably Hagar and Ishmael have been suffering abuse and disdain from Sarah this whole time anyways. And now the magical promise baby has come
to supplant,
you know, it would. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying abuse didn't happen. I'm just saying, I think the whole thing was abusive. And I think that I realize he's trying to talk to the people in a language that they understand, and that we're not his audience. So I have to actually do a lot of digging to even comprehend what he's getting at, because I'm mostly just like, you're a jerk when I read what Paul says. But
well, it probably isn't super relevant to our discussion today, but one of my favorite stories in the Bible is how God met Hagar and provided a well for her in the desert.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I love that too. And
I do too.
That shows the heart of God. And
he blessed Ishmael too. Like, you see how he's still, like, his race is still alive, you know, like his aunt, like he spread so successful, which was such a blessing back then, especially.
Yeah. It's
so God can make even our errors.
Yes. What you meant for harm,
for good,
or for self-gain, or for self-fulfillment, that created victims can be turned into a victory. Like there's so much redemption.
Something that I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you guys looked at the page with the graph about the whole phrase about Hagar's children in Sinai. But basically, N.T. Wright is saying that what he's pointing out as slavery is actually these descendants who live in this region, who live, you know, under pagan laws, because they were pagans. Hagar's descendants have always been pagans. I mean, obviously there's been incredible conversions that took place, but as a whole, her descendants have been pagans. And so that's the slavery that he's referring to, would be a religion that they all would have been very familiar with.
Abraham's such an important person, and so his mistakes are amplified. And of course, we still have Arabs fighting Jews in the Middle East, and we have dispensational Christians who are saying, well, the Arabs are the bad guys. And in a sense, Hagar is still being persecuted by the children of promise. To me, the whole thing, I hate it. I don't like it when people use allegory to teach, because to me, it's sort of like the low-hanging fruit. And
isn't that how Jesus taught?
No, he taught in parables.
Oh, so okay, so allegory versus parables is a distinction.
Yeah, to me, it's a big distinction. If saying this means that, and this is how I'm interpreting, here's how I'm going to prove my point, is I'm going to take a story and apply whatever I want to. And N.T. Wright makes a big distinction between what Paul is doing with allegory or metaphor. The church, the early church, second or third century.
Can you let this dog in? He is whining.
You're not muted.
Really got into a horrible season of allegory. And so every time they'd make a point, they'd pick an Old Testament story, and they would do what Paul does with Hagar and Sarah, and say, therefore, thus and so. And Wright points out a guy named Philo made that really popular. And it's kind of like the first crap theology season of the early church. I think Wright says that maybe Paul went into metaphor, and he chooses not to call it allegory, because allegory has a bad name amongst theologians. He calls it metaphor. And he says maybe he did it because the Judaizers were they started it and said, we're
He
like
was
Sarah,
contrasting the
Paul's-
conversation.
Yeah, he's like, okay, well, let's talk about that. You want the law? Then here's what's really going on. And so maybe he's just sort of condescending himself to what was already happening.
I have a
Anyway.
question. What do you believe is or are the characteristics of who we are, who share in Jesus's inheritance? Just real quick, just no big deal. I didn't really prepare for that question or anything.
I think of how Jesus said, they will know you're my disciples when you love how you love one another, how love is supposed to be the distinguishing factor. And for much of the church history, it has been love for the poor, love for the needy, love for the outcast that has so been against the social norms that it distinguishes Christians from the rest of society.
That's what it's supposed to be, but I mean, we're not all that great of it a lot of the time. And it's not a characteristic that we all hold.
What if it is the most common thread of anyone who is knowingly a Christian is that they have had the realization that they cannot save themselves?
To me, this intriguing combination of being desolate and having a mother and then reproducing like crazy. And Wright makes the point that he thinks Paul didn't just have Isaiah 54 in mind, but he had Psalm 87. And he referenced it so much in the section you had us reading, Joseph, that I looked it up and I love it. He's founded a city on the holy mountain. The Lord loves the gates of Zion more than any other dwellings. Glorious things are said of you, city of God. And then he starts talking about Gentiles, saying, this one was born in Zion. This one was born in Zion. All my fountains are in you. And it's like this stream of the whole world flowing into Zion.